the head of that maternity review, Donna Ockenden, joins me now. Ms Ockenden, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us. It's a real pleasure to have you on Sky News. You're 1 year...
Thank you.
You're 1 year into this review, and you've already concluded the report into Shrewsbury and Telford. This one, the Nottingham review, is expected to be larger than the review you've already done, the report that you've already done. I wonder, given that, what your sense is of what's gone wrong, more broadly speaking, within maternity services in the UK?
So I think we would all recognise that maternity services in England, I know best, but across the UK are under tremendous pressure. We know that there has been underfunding of maternity services for at least 10 years, so more than a decade. The Royal College of Midwives tell us that we are over 2,000 midwives short in England alone. And, that kind of pressure, of course, will lead to concerns where staff aren't able to always provide the care they would wish to give. That is one of the issues, without a doubt.
And that idea of workforce, because you talk a lot about that in your first report, is that to do with, we all know the issues of Brexit and European midwives not being able to return, not enough training of midwives or specific training. Is there anything else that also feeds into that lack of workforce?
So retention of the really precious staff that we have is of vital importance. So we know that staff on the ground are working, thousands and thousands of hours a week within maternity services, and not being paid for it because it's unpaid overtime. And if we think of the image, and I've used this image before, of a bath, maternity services being a bath, you can pour midwives and doctors, obstetricians and whatever in the top. But if the plug is out and midwives and obstetricians, neonatologists are draining through the plug hole, you're never going to get that bath full. So retention is absolutely vital to safe and high quality and inclusive services where midwives and doctors really want to work and give of their all.
And I think one thing that was really striking in the first report you produced was this idea of a them and us attitude in maternity service between the midwives and the obstetricians. It's quite unique in the UK that midwives have a lot of input within maternity care. In other countries, and I speak from experience here, the clinical staff, the obstetric staff often overrule the midwives. In the UK, midwives are given a lot more freedom, and yet it seems as though relations between them and the clinical staff are not great.
So I talk to midwives, obstetricians, neonatologists and anaesthetists and so on the ground pretty much every day of the week. And I know that there are many, many trusts where, there is a one-voice culture where midwives, as part of a multi-professional team, work incredibly well with their colleagues, where there are high levels of respect. And I can think of many, many trusts that I know quite well where that happens. I think where it doesn't happen, trust boards have got absolute accountability and responsibility for their maternity services to understand the issues that may be ongoing within their service and to take action where necessary. But I would stress that in many of the services that I know pretty well, that there are excellent working relationships and multi-professional training. Those teams that train well together will then work well together when their training is needed, in emergency situations and so on. So it's so important.
Yeah, it's interesting because what you're saying strikes me that it's about the management and it's about this structure often of NHS trusts. And, I know that cases like Lucy Letby are mercifully rare, but what we do hear again and again is this sense of inaction and, I hesitate to say even cover-up within NHS trusts. We had the father of Harriet Hawkins in Lisa Dowd's piece just now, in her report now, saying that he's going to be speaking to the Chief Constable in Nottingham. He's going to be bringing criminal charges. I just wonder, within that context, what you make, certainly of the way that the Lucy Letby case was handled by the Countess of Chester Hospital Trust. Is it all part of that same story?
So I think in terms of events at the Countess of Chester, my first thought would be my heartfelt condolences to the families for the terrible, terrible, life-changing events that have happened there. You know, the losses of their babies, the harm caused to their babies. You know, we all saw that unfold on our TV screens and in our newspapers, and it was just horrific. I don't think that drawing any potential parallels or similarities between Chester and Nottingham, Shrewsbury and Telford, East Kent and so on is helpful at all, because I haven't been there. I know that there is an independent inquiry set up, and I think that that inquiry now needs to be you know, set up at pace, but given the time to do its work, you know, in cooperation and with families and supporting those families. But other than that, I don't think that I can, you know, draw inferences or parallels because I haven't been there.
You're a midwife. You've trained as a midwife. You've delivered babies. You've been in that room. I wonder what advice you'd have to an expectant mother now looking to give birth within the NHS, looking at Shrewsbury and Telford, looking at Nottingham, looking fine at the Countess of Chester Hospital and thinking, what on earth do I do? Terrified already about this enormous thing. What advice would you have? OK, so my understanding is that the UK is one of the safest places in the world to give birth. Clearly, more needs to be done to ensure funding meets demand and that we have enough staff for every shift, every day, to be safely staffed. However, if women have concerns, they should and they must speak out, first to their midwife. In the unlikely case that they feel you know, not listened to, not heard, ask to speak to an obstetrician, and if absolutely necessary, every trust has a head of director of midwifery who should be available to local women. So women, I would hope, should not feel frightened and should feel able, you know, to speak out and be heard. And it is my view that they would be heard. OK, well, listen, thank you for that. I hope you are right. Donna Ockenden, the head there of the review into maternity services at Nottingham University Trust. Thank you.